Hello, I'm the Single Player, and in addition to being a lifelong gamer, I'm also a big fan of comic book superheroes. They're a lot more mainstream now due to the popularity of film adaptations, but I've always been a fan of the characters, having grown up with the Batman and X-Men cartoons. There's just something about a person or group with extraordinary skills or abilities helping others in need or danger that I've always found inspiring. Now, most people have a preference between the two biggest comic book publishers, Marvel and DC. I personally preferred Marvel for a while, then I got more into DC, and now I consider myself evenly split. Both sides have great characters for good or evil, and some that toe the line as mercenaries for hire or anti-heroes. There are also a lot of examples of a character from one company having many similar qualities, or even a parallel history with one from the other. With that in mind, I decided to compare one such pair of characters based on their strengths and relatable human qualities, rather than just who would win in a one-on-one battle. And what better way to kick off such a comparison than by looking at Marvel and DC's biggest technology-based heroes? This is my assessment of who's a better character and why in Marvel vs. DC, Iron Man vs. Batman. By now, many people are familiar with Batman's origins, as it has been retold many times in popular films and in other media. But that doesn't diminish its value to the strength of the character. Bruce Wayne was just a young boy of about 8 years old when his parents were murdered before his eyes in a mugging gone wrong in an area of Gotham City known as Crime Alley. Left with a seemingly boundless fortune and a mission to avenge their deaths, Bruce dedicates his life to becoming the best detective mind as well as the best martial artist in the world. With access to his family's technology company and his limitless inheritance, he acquires the gadgets he needs to turn his crime-fighting skills into a finely honed craft of vigilante justice. Iron Man's origin is a bit less depressing. Tony Stark is a genius scientist assisting the U.S. military in whatever war is going on at the time. He finds himself caught in an explosion and kidnapped by the enemy, who demands that he build weapons for them. With shrapnel in his heart, he must first design a tiny electromagnet to keep it from killing him. Once he does that, he builds a weaponized metal armor suit under the guise of obeying his captors, and upon completion he suits up, blasts his way to freedom, and decides to refine the suit for continued use against America's enemies.
America!
As for which origin I think is better, I'm going with Batman's. While Iron Man's is strong, especially in the film adaptation where he's given more depth and motivation, the dark and gritty reality of Bruce's backstory makes for a much more deeply psychological character. This is actually two categories in one for this case, and while I have to respect Tony Stark's genius as a scientist and his ability to create a miniature reactor,
in a cave! With a box of scraps!
the ability point has to go to Batman. Of course, his popularity has exploded over the past few years, and people line up for miles to join the Bat Army, but his detective skills and fighting prowess truly are remarkable. He is a master strategist, and can find a way to take advantage of any enemy's weakness, even in the toughest of situations. Does that mean he always emerges from battle unscathed? Of course not! Sometimes he even loses a fight. But if there's a way to outsmart his opponent, he'll find it. As for the technology, both men have access to all kinds of wonderful toys and goodies that any vigilante crime fighter would be envious of. However, Batman sticks with more basic tools like a grapple gun and bat-shaped shuriken, better known as batarangs. Iron Man's tech is better suited for larger threats, as he packs missiles, laser beams, and his palm-fired repulsor blasts that double as flight stabilizers. Of course, the different types of gadgetry reflects the hero's different purposes. But if you ask me which I'd rather have, I'd pick the high-powered awesomeness of the Iron Man armor every time. This is a really tough decision, as both characters have strong human elements that make them relatable and likable. Tony Stark may act like a jackass, but he struggles with alcoholism in a sometimes very realistic way. Other times it's just a passing plot point, like the unfortunately underdeveloped panic attacks from Iron Man 3. Bruce Wayne lives with his parents' death on a daily basis, and is often tortured by the traumatic memory of that night. Especially when villains like the Scarecrow and the Mad Hatter can get inside his mind and use his darkest fears against him. A prime example of this is the tremendously well done fear gas segments of Arkham Asylum. Is it me, or does the Scarecrow look a lot like Freddy Krueger in that game?
Hey, you forgot the Power Glove!
Also, the billionaire Playboy alter ego is something that they have in common. But with Batman, it's clearly a ruse. In Iron Man's case, it may be a way to mask his own emotional problems, but it seems much more genuine. That, combined with Batman's well-fleshed-out code of honor, gives the point to the Caped Crusader. This is by far the toughest part of all. There are always fanboys who will argue that their guy will win every time, and I'll admit that I can be a bit of a Batman fanboy at times. After all, I loved the Arkham games probably more than is natural, and I play them so much that my Xbox Live friends must wonder if I'm tired of them yet. But more than anything, I tried to look at this objectively. If these two met on an even playing field, where Batman could use his stealth tactics, and Iron Man could use his weapons without endangering himself or bystanders, who would come out on top? So, let's play this out logically, Mr. Spock. This is how I personally see the battle going down in my head. Batman would know right away that a head-on approach would get him killed, so he would pop a smoke pellet and get behind cover. While using his cowl to scan for a chink in the Iron Man armor, Tony would probably utilize some kind of heat sensor to detect where the Dark Knight was hiding. Batman would try using electric batarangs and possibly the remote electrical charge from Arkham City and The Dark Knight Rises. These would barely phase the suit, and Iron Man would start destroying Batman's cover and vantage points. On the run, Batman would try to use plastic explosives, which he would have to get close enough to plant on Iron Man. Here's where the fight could go either way, depending on whether or not he could get close enough to place the C4 on the weakest part of the armor, which would probably be the torso just under the chest plate. Given the firepower Iron Man would be throwing at him, I don't think he would, especially not in an open area where any and all points of cover could be destroyed by the suit. So, despite Batman's undeniable awesomeness, I don't think he could defeat Iron Man in an even fight on a level playing field. Now, if they fought without either of their suits or technology, I think we all know that would be a different story. At the end of the day... Hey, who do you think you are? I am Iron Man. Duh. You mean to tell me you don't think I can beat that tin can? I saved the world from an army of aliens. Who are you again? Are you dense? Are you retarded or something? Who the hell do you think I am? I'm the goddamn Batman! Okay, I've said some cheesy lines in my time, but that was worse than all of them. I swear to God. Swear to me! Well, clearly there's no reasoning with you. I'm out of here. Me too. This sucks. I must be going crazy. Where was I? At the end of the day, these are two great characters with relatable human qualities and flaws. They both have terrific media entries, including blockbuster movies with excellent performances, television cartoons, and video games. Except for the movie tie-in video games. Those always suck. But for a genius, Tony Stark is an idiot. In all three of his major motion pictures, he makes huge mistakes that usually have something to do with him opening his big fat mouth. In the first film, he announces to the press that he's dismantling his company's bread and butter weapons division and destroys any chance of keeping a secret identity just before the end credits.
I am Iron Man.
Thus putting everyone he knows and loves in danger. In the sequel, he spontaneously joins a Formula One race despite failing health, and gives the villain technobabble pointers on how to improve his weapons.
You could double up your rotations. Focus the repulsor energy through ionized plasma channels. It's effective. Not very efficient. But it's a passable knockoff. I don't get it. A little fine-tuning, you could have made a solid paycheck. You could have sold it to North Korea, China, Iran, or gone right to the black market. You look like you got friends in low places.
And in Iron Man 3, he calls out a terrorist leader on international television, providing his home address where he lives with his neglected girlfriend Pepper, and then does diddly shit to evacuate her or defend the place from the inevitable attack. It also turns out that he had an army of suits that could be deployed without pilots, and instead of using them to stop his house from being demolished, he saves them for the disappointing climax. I try to focus on the characters in general rather than just the movies, but it just bugs me how through all that, Tony Stark seems to learn nothing. If not for Robert Downey Jr.'s charismatic portrayal, I don't think they would have made it past Iron Man 2. The final and potentially deciding point goes to Batman, for not endangering his loved ones and broadcasting his identity and address to all the supervillains who want him dead. So Batman wins, but have no fear. For more episodes of Marvel vs. DC will soon be here.